The open development process of Ashes of Creation has been an experiment that we really have not seen in the MMO space, at least to this extent. Most MMOs are developed in a very closed environment and not shown at all until they are close to launch. With open development comes feedback, and to this point, other than a very short Alpha 1 testing period, there has not been a chance for players to give feedback. Instead, most of the feedback has been from an observer perspective. And to me, there's a huge difference between the two groups. Objective feedback given from an experienced player of a game is so much more valuable than it is from someone watching carefully curated parts of a developer gameplay session, especially from people that have not played similar games in the past. Fortunately, we are almost to the point where players can start giving that incredibly valuable feedback from a hands-on perspective. Until then, however, feedback will remain observational, and from my perspective, I find looking at other MMOs that had similar features in combination with what we are seeing in the monthly Ashes live streams is a decent approach. I'm not saying feedback from just watching the streams and not considering other MMOs is bad, or that my way is better, but I do think more should at least consider this approach. Let's take the recent Profession stream as the first example. There are some that are saying that the Profession skill trees are too basic. When looking at other MMOs, most do not have skill trees for professions. They do, of course, for player skills, but not for crafting professions. And if they do have profession skill trees, they oftentimes are pretty basic. And this also does not consider that this might be the low-level skill tree only, and it might expand at higher skill levels. So sure, a more complex tree might be nice, but this is an already very complex MMO. I'm going to tend to err on the side of encouraging less complexity personally. Next we have the Profession Mastery change. It used to be said that you could become a Grandmaster in 2 professions within one of the 3 artisan trees of gathering, processing, or crafting. The recent change is that you can become a Grandmaster in any 2 professions regardless of the tree it is in. A lot of people were upset with this change, thinking that it reduces the need to work with others or allows people to be more self-sufficient. Personally, purely on paper, I like the change as I think it makes the game a little more approachable for smaller groups of players, which I think this game could end up needing more things that are approachable for smaller groups. Also, it's important to remember that nothing in Ashes comes easy. Becoming a Grandmaster in one profession, I suspect, will take a massive amount of time. Grandmaster in 2 professions could take so much time that maybe it's rare for someone to actually be a Grandmaster in 2 professions. But again, we don't really know until we see it in action. Next, the Caravan stream brought out several points of discussion. One I saw was people saying that Caravan attackers need to have a penalty. Again, I would start to look at games with similar systems. Arcade's trade pack system did not have a penalty for the attacker, and I don't recall people asking for one either. Then we had people saying the Caravan move speed is too slow. First, the Caravans can of course be upgraded further. We only saw some lower level upgrades. Second, I do believe the Caravans probably have to move slower than character run speed, or else they're going to be quite hard to kill. Mounts of course have combat skills like in Arcade, but they are basically 4 skills and not a complete kit that can work through the massive health pool of a Caravan. So people will need to be able to dismount and attack the Caravan to be able to put real damage into the Caravan without it quickly running away. Otherwise they're going to be very hard to kill. So I think they're probably going to need to be somewhat slow, most likely. Then people said the Caravan announcement and the spawn time was too slow. Again, if you compare this to the trade packs in Arcade, Ashes has improved on the design of trade packs in that they allow you to spawn the Caravan away from the Caravansary. So let's just see if it works better than Arcade, and then we can adjust further once we actually start to play it. Next, we have freehold access being too limited. Now this is one that I did bring up as a potential issue when we found out how restrictive freehold access potentially is. The reason I find it potentially an issue is that one of the biggest issues with games that Ashes is based on, Arcade and Lineage 2, very much favored Zerg guilds and were unfavorable to smaller groups. So it has long been something that I've worried about could be a problem with Ashes, and the severely limited number of freeholds does add to that concern for me. However, just like everything else, we don't know yet, because we haven't actually seen it in practice. So let's see it in action and then we'll revisit it later. Next we have this one, which I've seen in my comments I don't know how many times. New World was a running simulator. Why won't Ashes also be a running simulator with a much larger map? Well, my response here is long, complicated, and will probably make this video much longer than it needs to be, so I'm planning to do this in another video. But suffice it to say, I'll be looking at a lot of prior MMOs, and not just New World, and then comparing them to what we know about Ashes. Long story short though, to spoil the video a little bit, you run a lot in a lot of older school MMOs, and none of them were called running simulators. New World was, and there are some differences, and I'll point that out. Next, the whole Ashes graphics need to be more stylized debate, which is such an odd one to me, and to be honest, I just feel as though no one was saying it until one very influential person started saying it. And then people do what they do these days, they just parrot that person's opinions. I find complaining about the graphics odd in general, as to me this is already one of the best looking MMOs, even with the final polishing phase likely still many years away. And really that's all I have for this one, guys. Just a little bit of a rant from me, I guess, because I constantly see people complaining about features, and I don't necessarily see the problem with many of these features, at least until we see it in practice. Thanks for watching to the end, and I'll see you guys in the next video.